Good afternoon and welcome back to Football League World TV. We are in the thick of deadline day, which means it's time for another EFL transfer zone. I'm your host this time around, Alfie Burns, and I'm delighted to be joined by my colleague Toby Wilding. Toby, you're just logging on for the slog of an evening shift. How are you getting on today?
Yeah, I can't wait for this whole midnight run. It's going to be a late one, but there should be plenty of stuff to keep us busy. So I'm really excited now to sort of see what these last few hours of deadline day throw up, because this is where things really do get interesting and tense as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much going on across all three divisions. We could fill this show probably until 11 o'clock, but we're not gonna. We've picked out a couple of headlines that we're going to dive into. We're streaming across Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter this afternoon. So anybody joining us want to get themselves in the comments, please do. It would be great to hear from you. We're going to run through some of the done deals, some of those deals that look particularly likely, and then a couple of rumours floating around. We'll get stuck into the done deals first, though. Since our last show in late morning, Tyrese Simpson has been confirmed as a Huddersfield Town player. He's signed a long-term deal at the John Smith Stadium, arriving from Ipswich Town. It's been a tough start to the season for Huddersfield and Danny Schofield. Another defeat last night for the Terriers at Bristol City. Danny Ward and Jordan Rhodes leading the line at Huddersfield. Toby, do you think that Simpson comes in and impacts the first team straight from the off?
Yeah, I would have thought so. I kind of feel like, given the way his departure from Ipswich seems to have come about with the transfer request he apparently put in towards the end of last season, it certainly seems as though he will have done that with the aim of moving on and getting that regular football elsewhere at a decent level. So I don't think he would have agreed to this move if he doesn't feel like there is opportunities there for him. And I do think he's someone who can make the most of those opportunities. I mean, he was very impressive on loan at Swindon in the first half of last season. And I think you sort of mentioned there Jordan Rhodes and Danny Ward. They're sort of really the only two senior centre-forward options I would say Huddersfield have, who are sort of established at this level. And, you look at their age in comparison to Tyrese Simpson, he's coming in now a much more of a long-term prospect for Huddersfield, you feel. So certainly important in that sense to get a signing like this done and give themselves a bit of a foundation in that respect. And I think also, you sort of look at the physical presence he provides, the way he can put himself about against defenders. I think that is perhaps something a bit different to what Huddersfield have got at the minute. Again, with the height he has, the balls into the box he can get on the end of. I think he's going to be quite a big player for Huddersfield in maybe a few different respects. So, yeah, for me, that certainly looks a good signing for the Terriers after what's been a pretty tough start to the season.
Another done deal in the last couple of hours. Sam Cosgrove has joined Plymouth Argyle from Birmingham City. Cosgrove struggled to get amongst the goals for Birmingham. I think I'm right in saying he hasn't scored since making the move to St Andrews. And he's had a fairly poor scoring record at both AFC Wimbledon and Shrewsbury on loan quite recently. Plymouth then, do you think that they can get Cosgrove back into the kind of form he was at Aberdeen a couple of years ago, where he was, of course, quite prolific?
Yeah, I think that there is the potential for that. I think, as you say, this is very much a move that Cosgrove needed. Things haven't worked out for him at St Andrews, and it's hard to sort of imagine that he would have been getting a chance there had he stayed for the rest of the season. So I think it benefits him that this has happened. I'm slightly surprised that Plymouth have moved for him, maybe given that record he has at League One level with Wimbledon and Shrewsbury. But that being said, there is no doubt that he does know where the net is. You don't score as many goals as he did for Aberdeen without having that goal scoring instinct. And you could maybe argue that in a team like Plymouth, who have started the season quite strongly and who do have quality players for that level, he might get more of the chances he needs to start putting the ball away again than maybe he did with teams such as Shrewsbury and Wimbledon, who were perhaps sort of found themselves more battling towards the wrong end of the table. So that could potentially open up a few more chances for Cosgrove and could actually despite the fact that, as I say, it seems like a bit of maybe a left field one, it could still be one that works out quite well potentially.
Let's take a look at a handful of deals that aren't quite confirmed yet, but look very much down the line. We'll start with Callum Robinson, who we've discussed on the channel over the last couple of days. It looks like he's heading to Cardiff City. They look to have won the race to sign the West Brom striker on what will be a permanent transfer and something that's probably quite a standout signing on deadline day. Would you agree, Toby?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, it's not quite worked out for Callum Robinson of late at West Brom, but you look at what he has done for the Baggies and indeed Sheffield United previously. He is a very good player at this level when he gets the opportunity and he is in top form. And even in the Premier League, there have been sort of flashes of brilliance from him at that level. So if Cardiff can sort of rediscover that on a regular basis, it could be a very big signing for them. I think, again, as busy as they have been in the window, it still felt like they needed that little bit of extra attacking firepower leading the line. And as I say, when you consider the record that Robinson has produced previously in the Championship, he is someone who could certainly provide that for Cardiff. And as I say, with the sort of the profile of this signing, sort of to get it done for the fee that is involved, it's another pretty big statement of intent, I would say, from Cardiff. And it's a window where they needed to sort of, overhaul that squad, seemed to be the sense, and you can't deny that they have done that to quite great effect with certainly a long list of impressive signings of players who are well established and high quality at this level, and this is another one that sort of tops it off quite nicely on deadline day for them, in my opinion.
Robinson scored 7 goals and registered 9 assists last season for West Brom. Given how his season sort of went and where West Brom ended up in the table, it wasn't a bad return. And do you think it's something that he can replicate in a Cardiff City shirt?
Yeah, as I say, I think with that need for more attacking firepower, he's definitely, I would expect, going to get those opportunities to be an important player for Cardiff. I don't think he would have gone there or be going there if he wasn't going to get those chances. And when you mention that sort of record and you consider sort of the struggles that West Brom had for goals from pretty much all of their attacking options last season, to still be able to produce that sort of return is very impressive. And as I say, with Robinson probably going to be a focal point for Cardiff, I would be expecting him to do similar to that in the world's capital this season, and that would certainly make him a very good signing for Steve Morrison's side.
Another deal that's looking quite likely then, Matty Longstaff from Newcastle to Barnsley on an initial loan, but with an option of a permanent move to Oakwell at the end of that. 18 League Two appearances with Mansfield last season for Longstaff, and he also chipped in with 6 goals down in the 4th tier. Obviously, stepping up into League One potentially, Toby. Do you think that this is a good deal for Barnsley, and do you think Longstaff, he's going to be able to cut it at that level?
Yeah, I'd say he was. I mean, obviously, he had a few Premier League appearances under his belt at Newcastle from not that long ago, a couple of seasons, and I always thought he held his own pretty well when he was tasked with doing that job. So I don't think playing in League One should be any major problem for him. And I think in that respect, this is a sort of a really good signing for Barnsley. And with that option to buy, it could sort of present something of a statement of intent to the rest of the league, being able to pull off a deal such as this. But at the same time, it's smart, because if it means that if he doesn't, then they've not wasted any sort of transfer fee on him, but they are in a great position to get him permanently if he does prove to be a really good addition for them this season. And I think as we're going to touch on when we come on to a few of the rumours that are still bubbling under at the minute, it does look as though some extra options in the centre of midfield could be quite useful for Barnsley and may well be needed to sort of fill potential voids of players who could be moving on in the next few hours, which again could make this a very good piece of business for them.
Before we move on to those rumours, then one last deal to discuss. Josh Kerber leaving Middlesbrough for Bristol Rovers on loan. 6 senior goals for Middlesbrough in total for Kerber. Do you think a loan's the right thing for the 19-year-old at this stage of his career?
Yeah, I think again this is sort of one that makes sense. You look at the strikers that Middlesbrough have already brought in this summer, and the fact that it does sound as though they have got sort of their eyes on another one potentially coming in. It sort of suggests that it would be hard for Coburn to get that regular football at the Riverside this season, and when you consider the fact that he has already got a few of those opportunities, and the fact that he has again made a pretty decent impact when playing in those games, it would seem like regular senior football is the best thing for him now to sort of show that he can cope with those demands week in, week out, and certainly you would expect him to be put under a fair amount of pressure playing in League One in that Bristol Rovers side. So it should be a really good challenge for him, a big chance for him to sort of prove himself and show what he can do when he is playing from one week to the next. So to me, that does look like a good move for him into a sort of quite an ambitious, I would say, Bristol Rovers side who should be feeding him a fair few opportunities to add to what's say probably quite a promising goal tally for the experience and the game time that he has had so far at senior level.
You've kind of touched on it there already, but we know how much Chris Wilder likes his strikers, with him looking to play 2 up front. Coburn moving on. A few hours left of the window. It leaves it open for Middlesbrough to bring somebody in as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Like you say there, he likes his strikers, Chris Wilder, so I don't think he would be taking any chances on leaving himself short by letting Coburn go out on loan if he wasn't confident he was going to get another one in. Obviously, there's been plenty of names mentioned as potential targets for Middlesbrough in that area all window. So it is going to be interesting now to see what he can come up with. But definitely, if this deal is going to go ahead for Coburn to Bristol Rovers, it would be a bit of a surprise for me if there isn't something there in the pipeline to sort of fill that void. With probably someone more established at that level who might at this point be able to make that more significant impact in the Championship for Wilder's side, who just sort of starting to show a few more signs of getting going after a slow start to the season, despite that sort of bit of a disappointing end at Vicarage Road on Tuesday.
Let's talk about some bit more speculative pieces of news that are floating around at the moment. Over the last 24 hours, there's been an interesting situation regarding Will Boyle at Huddersfield Town. He was obviously brought in as a free transfer earlier in the summer. He's only played 113 minutes across all competitions under Danny Schofield at Huddersfield. And reports yesterday were suggesting that Huddersfield would be open to letting Boyle leave on loan. Toby, what are your thoughts on that? Are you quite surprised by Huddersfield taking this stance?
Yeah, it is a bit surprising to sort of make that sort of move and then seemingly change that stance so quick. I mean, I think Boyle was brought in quite early in the summer transfer window, wasn't he? And then of course there was the situation, the change in management with the departure of Carlos Kerber, and so whether that's had something to do with it in that he was maybe more of a target of the old regime and perhaps doesn't quite fit into the plans that Huddersfield have got now that they have made that change, could be a possible situation that has developed here. But nevertheless, it might make sense. And I mean, it does sound like Huddersfield are quite keen to bring in a few more defenders. So if that is the case, given that, as you say, Boyle is already not playing sort of that as a regular for Huddersfield, it could be better for him to go out and have another season playing football elsewhere. I think obviously Michael Hellick from Barnsley appears to be a name that's been thrown up as a potential target for Huddersfield recently, and he of course has that sort of extra Championship experience from the past couple of years that Boyle doesn't really have, that and that could be sort of really important for Huddersfield in shoring up a defence that has been pretty leaky so far this season. So in that respect, while it sort of feels like a bit of an unexpected development, it could be one that if Huddersfield can get a few more deals done, could end up making a decent amount of sense.
Yeah, I think Huddersfield might be one to watch in the final few hours of the transfer window. Moving over to Barnsley then, and Callum Styles. We've already spoken about Barnsley bringing in Mattia Longstaff, but Callum Styles is a player that reportedly could be on the move. Interest from Stoke, Sheffield United and Blackburn Rovers, and I think just before we came on air, Millwall's name was thrown into the mix to sign the Hungary international. Toby, quite a simple question. Do you think that Styles is still going to be a Barnsley player come 11 p.m. tonight?
It wouldn't massively surprise me if he does move on, if I'm being honest. I think as we sort of touched on when we were talking about the Longstaff deal, it is arguably a sense of Barnsley putting in place a potential replacement for him. And I think when you sort of look at how things have gone for Barnsley in this window, it does seem as though they are certainly sort of open to letting some of their key players return to the Championship for the right sort of fee. Obviously, Callum Britton to Blackburn, Carlton Morrison, Coley Woodrow both to Luton. You just mentioned there the possibility of Michael Hellick as well. So that it does seem as though they are in a position where they will let players go if the right offer comes in. I think Styles is certainly one who will be coveted and that clubs will be tempted to make those sorts of offers for. And obviously, he is into the final year of his contract at Oakwell as well, albeit with an option to extend. But nevertheless, that could put a bit of pressure on the Tykes if an offer comes in. And I think you've got to sort of think of it from the perspective of his ambitions as well. I mean, we sort of saw it with Christian Bielik, I think, at Derby, didn't we? Moving back to the Championship with Birmingham on loan, that sort of seemed to come off the back of the suggestion that Bielik will have to be playing at as high a level as he can if he wants to be in Poland's World Cup squad. And obviously Hungary not qualified for the World Cup, but they still do have internationals coming up, and you would imagine Styles is going to want to be involved in them as much as possible. And similar to that, it's one of them situations where if he can get a move back up to playing at Championship level, it's going to give him a better opportunity of getting those sort of opportunities on the international stage. So it may be one where Barnsley feel that they need to do right by a player who's been a good servant to them for the past few years in that respect as well. So I wouldn't be hugely surprised if Styles does move on before the window closes.
Let's talk about João Pedro then at Watford. Recent statement on his Instagram account has sort of underlined his commitment to Watford, having had a discussion with the board. But earlier today, it was reported how Eddie Howe at Newcastle, who have been hot on the heels of Pedro for quite a few weeks now, have funds available to spend today. Do you think we might be getting some late drama here, or do you think that João Pedro is going to be a Watford player after that statement?
I mean, I woun't put it past Newcastle to try one more time. That's for certain. It would be that sort of classic big money club move to throw one last big offer out of nowhere late on deadline day for a player such as this. And certainly when you consider the way that the Alexander Isak deal came about, that was one that was very much out of nowhere. So it wouldn't be out of character for Newcastle to come up with a bit of something out of nothing. But despite that, I still get the feeling now that Pedro might be a Watford player tomorrow morning. Still, I think with that sort of post that he's put out, it seems like his mentality is very much he's accepted, well, not just acceptant, but he's happy to still be a Watford player. I think that puts Watford in a really strong position. That those sorts of comments from him, it means there's no sort of pressure on them that they can really point to from the player, and his contract situation as well means, it's not a case of they have to sell now or that's it. They're going to lose a player of his quality for nothing in the future. So right now, it feels to me as though all of a sudden with that sort of statement, Watford do look to be in a pretty good position with regards to Pedro, in my opinion.
from one Zhao to another. Then Lucas Zhao of Reading, attracting reported interest from Fenerbahce at this late stage of the transfer window. Zhao scored 39 goals and registered 14 assists during his time as a Reading player, which is quite a remarkable record given the injuries that he struggled with during his time with the Royals. He's not really a player that Reading, if they want to achieve anything this season, can afford to lose in these next few hours, is he?
No, I don't think he is at all. I mean, with the exception of this week and that result at Bramall Lane, it's been an outstanding start to the season for Reading, in my opinion. I think it's better than anyone really expected it to be. But I think keeping Lucas Zhao will be absolutely key to that because, as I say, as impressive as they have been at the start of this campaign, that they are still not sort of massively prolific in front of goal with regards to who they would be relying on if Zhao would be to leave. Only really Shane Long is your other sort of standout centre forward option. He's very much a veteran, just the one goal in 7 games for him so far. So I do think it would be a massive sort of risk for Reading now to let him move on, especially with obviously the time running out to find a replacement, and that of course made even harder for Reading in particular because of the restrictions they've had to work under in this transfer window, which I think, just as an aside, makes what they have been able to do in the market even more impressive. And if they were to keep hold of Lucas Zhao amid that interest, I think that would just really top it off quite nicely for them.
Finally then, let's discuss Siriki Dembele of Bournemouth, who has been linked with a late move to Blackburn Rovers, your club. Toby, first of all, do you think that this would be a good move for Rovers to be looking to make?
Yeah, I sort of think it would, in fairness. I think it's not particularly surprising maybe that this sort of link has come about with Dembele. Blackburn were linked to him sort of late in the January transfer window. I think Barry Fry even confirmed that Peterborough had accepted an offer for him, but Dembele ultimately chose to go to Bournemouth, but it hasn't quite worked out for him there. Certainly not since they've moved back up to the Premier League. It does seem as though he is one player who could be on the way out. So that does make Rovers perhaps a bit of an obvious destination, but I do think it's a deal that could still be a good one for Jan Dahl Thomason's side. Even with Peterborough, the first half of last season, he was still able to make a pretty useful impact for a club who sort of found themselves obviously at the wrong end of the Championship table. And I think you sort of look at the signings that Blackburn have made already this season. For me, that they've now sort of covered the big six that needed to be replaced in Lenihan, Van Hekke, Nyambe, Rothwell, Kadra and Armstrong. So anything else might be a bit of a bonus, or it could still become very much a necessity, depending on what happens with Ben Brereton Diaz in the last few hours of the window. And I do think that if Diaz was to move on, it would be a player like Dembele, who I would sort of more like to see Rovers look to rather than an out-and-out centre forward, because I think you've sort of got that cover for Sam Gallagher in there now with George Hurst, but you need someone who's a bit more mobile than that, who can sort of maybe do that more creative role with the running up and down the wings and the balls into the box that you see from Brereton Diaz as well. And I think you might get that a bit more from Dembele than you would by maybe going for a potential another centre forward option. So that is another one that if it were to happen, I would certainly be happy with. And I think even if Diaz doesn't go, it could still be one that's worth going for, because as I say, whilst they've replaced those big six players, they've still lost a lot of other sort of fringe depth players from the squad. So it wouldn't be a bad thing to bring in another extra body or two to provide a bit of cover for them. So yeah, I'd certainly be happy with that deal if it was to go through, speaking as a Blackburn fan.
That concludes mine and Toby's look at some of the done deals and speculation floating around the EFL at this moment in time. We'll be back in a couple of hours with another AFL transfer zone. As we've mentioned right at the top of the show, things moving particularly fast now, and surely more done deals within the next couple of hours, and probably more pieces of speculation. So make sure you tune in to that show. I think it's coming up at 4:30. It is coming up at 4:30. Just had that checked. So yeah, join us again at 4:30. But between now and then, take care.